Good morning, Internet. I'm Ryan, and this is the Friday morning real estate chat. So I'm really looking forward to answering a whole bunch of questions from you all. So if you want to go ahead and post them in the chat, we can get rocking. Let's see. I think weekly updates for me. We put some properties under contract. We were able to walk through them. They look pretty solid. Pretty proud of them. They're in our target area, which is even more exciting. And we're able to get them at some pretty deep discounts, which is also very exciting. So that I think we have 5 under contract at the moment, which is really solid. We took a brief hiatus. We put a brief pause on purchasing properties to get caught up on the ones that we have under rehab, and a lot of those are getting finished up and rented out. So we have recently rented a lot of the projects that we have been working on, which is always a good feeling. So we're having tons of fun. Only good things to report. Awesome. Hey, welcome back. Thanks for coming back. And Toronto. Man, I'll tell you what. I'm a fan of this being an international real estate chat. How's the Canadian market? What are the prices like in Toronto? I have one insurance client that invests here in Dayton, and he lives in I want to say Alberta, but that would just be a complete guess. But he says that the average home price in his area is a little bit north of $1 million. And we went on to talk about how what the average income was, because the average housing price being that high is a little bit crazy. And then he said that the average income is about 40 to 50,000. So I have no idea how those two are sustainable or how people do it, but apparently most people rent. But that's still pretty bananas. I would not want to buy $1 million home, to rent it for something that someone could afford on a 40 to 50,000. I don't know how that's profitable, but I guess that is why he invests here locally in Dayton in the wonderful Midwest. Thanks, William Boyd. I'm happy you're on here, man. It looks like you've got a podcast or some sort of show of your own. I'll check that out. I appreciate that. Are you in real estate as well? It's pretty sweet. And yeah, Pittsburgh, I think the prices are pretty similar. I've got a few clients that have properties here in Dayton and also around that area in Pennsylvania. I think it's more so like the rural areas outside of Pittsburgh rather than inside the actual city limits, but close enough. Close enough. Awesome. Well, this is exciting. We've got a bunch of regulars in here at the moment. So perhaps maybe you've already exhausted all your questions. Who knows? But if so, if not, I'm prepared to answer them. I'm trying to think of other things that have come up throughout the week that we have talked about. Okay, so here's something that happened this past week that I'm not necessarily proud of. There was a property listed on one of my favorite streets in the area, and I really wanted the property. And it was listed at a very reasonable rate. I think it was listed for like 52,000, maybe 51,000, somewhere in that range. And we've got a lot of properties, even adjacent to or just like contiguous with that property. So it would have been an awesome fit in our portfolio. Well, I got the bright idea to offer 40,000 because I just wanted to get the offer on the table and figure out what a good price for both parties would be. And lo and behold, it was so low. These are their words, not mine. It was so low that they thought they were just too far off from us, and they never even countered. It immediately sold, or another offer was accepted. So that was a little bit of a bummer. 52,000 again. I think that would have been like a fair price to pay for that. So looking back on it, hindsight, they say, is always 2020. I really kind of kicked myself. It's just like if I thought that was a fair price to begin with, why did I attempt to offer 40,000? But also in my defense, most times that works, and most times that just gets the conversation going, and we meet in the middle somewhere. It's not even necessarily the middle. Sometimes they'll say things like, "Well, 50,000 is as low as I'll take," and then I'll say, "Okay, 50,000 it is." And other times, we've offered low offers like that. Like recently, a property was okay. Now that I'm actually talking it out, I understand why I did that. Because another property was listed for 60,000. I was rather indifferent as to whether or not we purchased it. We offered 45,000 for the property, and they asked for 55, and I said no. 45 is all we'll do. And then they asked for 50, and I said again, no, 45 is all we'll do, and we ended up getting it. They accepted it at 45. So truly, it was all that I would do, and in that case, we saved $15,000 or purchased it for $15,000 less. So I guess sometimes it works. In this particular case, when I knew that I wanted the property because of all the contiguous properties that we have already in that area on that street, perhaps it was a little bit silly for me to attempt to do that. But hey, you live and you learn, you win some and you lose some, as somebody once said. Who knows? I'll be looking at having 30K liquid to play with here by this fall. What would you look for in your first rental property? That's a really good question, man. For the first rental property, I would be pretty conservative, quite honestly. One of the things that I often reflect on, and I always like to preface stuff like this with the fact that there are just as many different ways to make money in real estate investing as there are people investing in real estate. So just because I did something a certain way doesn't mean that it's necessarily the appropriate way to do things. It's just kind of how I did it. And we did not do any real rehab project until we were in the 20s. So I think our first full-blown rehab was property number 21 or 22. Property number 22 is what it was. So at that point, previously, we had only done maybe some touch-up paint and maybe changing out some flooring. That was about the extent of the rehab work that we've ever done. So for the first couple of properties, now I have no idea what your background is. You might be really experienced in the real estate world or the contracting world, so it wouldn't necessarily be too daunting for you to go in and kind of act like a GC over a rehab project. But I wouldn't necessarily recommend it for most people. I would say your first rental, buying something as close to rent ready as possible is probably the best way to go. I think on your first property, you're really looking to get your foot in the door, and you don't want to get yourself in a position where you have a significant amount of rehab costs and no history with contractors to help you get it finished. Because, even, unless you're going to do all the work yourself, then maybe that's a little bit of a different story. But still, I wouldn't want to get too deep on the rehab side for your first project. I would say get the ball rolling by buying a property that's pretty close to being rent ready, and then just get that experience in the resident management side of things, and then just maintaining the property. So I would use that 30 grand probably as a down payment on a property that is already in pretty good shape, if you're bankable. If you can get a loan and you can use the 30 grand as part of the 25% down, you should be good to go. That's what I would say. Also been trying to understand HUD homes better. I know you've mentioned doing well with HUD homes. Anything to know about them in particular for new real estate investors? Sure. HUD HUD homes are homes that are owned by the federal government. So any of the like long-term low interest loans, like the 30-year, 2.5%, 4% loans, generally banks don't keep those in their own like in-house portfolio. They sell them back to Fannie or Freddie, and then they become government backed. So the bank will still service the loan, and in the event that the person that has that federally backed loan defaults on the property, then the bank is the one that initiates the foreclosure. The bank is the one that shows up at the sheriff's sale, bids on the property for their total loan amount. And then once they win the property for the total loan amount, they will file a claim or something with the federal government. I really don't know how that works, but they will somehow sell the property to the government for their total loan amount so that they're not out any money because it's government backed. Then HUD is like, what is it, Housing and Urban Development or something like that, the federal government property arm or whatever. They will turn around and sell the property for probably the loan amount plus some other fees and whatnot. And I think for like the first 11 or 14 days, only people that are willing to own or occupy the property, or if they're a government or nonprofit agency, then they're the only ones that can bid in like the first 11 days. After that, it will open up to all people that want to bid on the property. That's when people like you and I are able to throw in our bid to the ring and see what happens. I would say it's really hit or miss. Right now, generally, I haven't seen much good come through the HUD Home program in Dayton for a while, but I would say they generally go pretty quickly once it's opened up to all the bidders. And I would say the ones that are open, that make it to the point where they're open to all bidders, are ones that are in a little bit more disrepair than people wanting to own or occupy a property are willing to do. Now, if you're willing to own or occupy the property, then because it's a FHA program, you can also utilize that 203K loan because it's already on the government's books and they're willing to lend you the rehab money so long as you're going to be an owner occupant. So I think if I were trying to make really big plays in the beginning, I wouldn't be opposed to owner occupying a HUD home and utilizing that FHA 203K loan. And then somehow house hacking that property. I think that would be a winning strategy. Or if you have a family, then just, living there for a year or two, however long you need to satisfy those requirements. I did, Tolu. I hope you did too. I'm happy you're back here. Rental property owned in Tolu. Thanks for coming in. You might have talked about this and I missed it, but what's your take on the nationwide market? Do you think that the boom will continue for a while? That beard. Thanks, man. Let's see. So I've talked about it a little bit, but nowhere that's like easy to find, I don't think. But I think there's a little bit of an issue with the question, and that's my take on the nationwide market. I don't think that's a real thing. So real estate is not like this homogenous group of nationwide housing stock, right? It's not like if real estate was a stock, it's not like all of the real estate nationwide would be like one ticker symbol. It's not like it moves together like that. Places that are easy to pick on, like California, Seattle, New York, those places, the housing prices are so ridiculous and so inflated that it would be really difficult to compare that with somewhere like Dayton or Pittsburgh, where we used to have booming economies. We used to have tons of jobs back in like the Industrial Revolution, and when like, the automotive and steel industries were both domestic and like the main employers, right? But now we have kind of shells or remnants of our glory days, and ours are the exact opposite of the Californias or Seattles or New Yorks. And we could buy fantastic properties that are ready to live in for like $40,000 and $45,000, where it would likely cost, $150,000, $200,000 to rebuild it. Whereas out in California, sure, it'll still cost you $150,000 to $200,000 to build it, but they're selling for, $1 million, $2 million, and labor is probably higher than that. I really don't know much about California. You might not be able to build a house, or maybe it's the land cost that drives it up. I really don't know. But if something does happen, then it will not equally affect all of the markets. There are going to be, I would say, likely the people that are going to get hit the hardest and feel it the most are the ones that are already most overextended. I think markets that are in the Rust Belt are pretty well insulated because we have already been depressed for so long for a multitude of other reasons. Now, if you look at our prices historically, then, one of my mentors here locally, he used to buy homes based on $5,000 per bedroom. So $10,000 for a 2-bedroom and $15,000 for a 3-bedroom. We might see those prices again in like a doomsday type scenario, but I only think that would be advantageous for investors that, are able to be liquid and take advantage of opportunities like that. Now, I say that, but at the same time, I would not recommend that anybody sit on the sidelines and try and call this or try and predict or speculate, because when I got into real estate investing in like 2016 and 17, I remember listening to a bunch of the Bigger Pockets podcasts, and everybody was calling for another real estate crash. And they were saying that prices were overextended. All of the things that people are saying now, they were also saying in 2016 and 17, and it didn't happen. So if I were to have listened, if I were to have sat on the sidelines, and we would not have our portfolio, we would have far less, or we would still be waiting, and we would have missed out on, the millions of dollars that we have been able to make in just like sitting and waiting. So I think, and if you were to compare those two stocks, then I would say a lot of the like financial advisors and those folks would say something like, regardless of whether the market is up or down, you should always be buying, and you should always like dollar cost average your way in. And if you're familiar with dollar cost averaging, then it is if you have $1,000 to invest, rather than investing that $1,000 in a lump sum over the next 10 months, put in $100 per month. And in theory, you would get an average that should be lower than the initial point of entry, where you may have put in $1,000 in one lump sum. So regardless of real estate, whether it go up or down, I think you should always be buying and always being responsible, staying liquid, keeping healthy reserves, and all of that. So that's kind of my take on it. I think I would just be excited in the fact that where we already live is in a desirable area to be in the event of a downturn. Another point that I would like to really drive home when I'm asked this question is, in the event that the market corrects substantially, then it only really makes a difference if you are looking to sell your rental properties. But most of the people on this channel, most of the people that have the desire to get into real estate are doing so for the long term. So the purchase price is pretty well irrelevant so long as you don't plan on selling. And if you have only Fannie Freddie or fixed loans for 20, 30 years, then they're not, the chances of them calling your loan is extraordinarily slim on the fixed ones. So I wouldn't worry about that. I would just ride it out. And rents, when the overall rental property market corrects, the rental rates do not correspond to that. So if housing prices decrease by 30%, your rent is also not going to correct by 30%. They might not go up, but they also might not go down. I think in places like this wonderful Rust Belt that we're in, I don't think the biggest threat to like the business model of being a real estate investor is in what the housing market is. I think it's like who drives in, who attracts people to live in that area. So like the employers, I think, are a big one that we're more dependent on. So if you are analyzing properties for cash flow and you could buy it at the market rate or whatever the agreed purchase price is, and considering whatever rehab or costs you have to incur in order to make it rent ready, if you are analyzing from a cash flow perspective and you still have the ability to cash flow or be cash flow positive at that purchase price, then it's likely a good investment. And so long as your mortgage is fixed, then you're going to be okay because you analyze the property for cash flow. And in the event of a market downturn, your rent will not go down. However, let's say if your area's largest employer, for whatever reason, decides to leave that area and 1,000, 2,000 jobs all of a sudden leave the area, well, that is going to have more of an impact on the rental property market because there are going to be a lot of vacancies. And now in order to fill the vacancies, it becomes a price thing because the demand isn't there for those houses. So that, I think, is the biggest vulnerability to people that want to build single family rental portfolios, is the reliability and the staying power that employers have in the area. And I think that is one of the many reasons that the Rust Belt is a little bit hurt at the moment, is because at some point, generally, in these areas, large employers left. They were either outsourced to some other country or just, stopped altogether. So I think that's all that I have to say about it. And I think if I were to go into any more detail, I would just start repeating things I've already said. So I hope that helps. I'm going to look at these comments now. Man, nobody asked any questions on that rant. That's pretty bananas. Well, thanks, William Boyd. thanks for asking all these questions. Well, is it going to be that short of a live stream? We got 11 people in the chat in the first 30 minutes. That's pretty good. I'm happy about that. Generally, it's like an hour and a half in before we pop over that 20-person mark. So I imagine this is how college courses would be if there was no consequence for being late. Everybody would just kind of slowly trickle, and the class population would be highest about halfway through. Makes sense. I do have to go look at a property at 11 a.m. today. So this one might be just naturally a little bit shorter of a live stream. Hey, man. Happy to see you back again. Jermaine Davis, what's up, man? I've never seen you on here before, so welcome. And thanks for joining. Every Friday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Standard, I'm right here trying to answer some real estate questions. And you just ask yourself, or you just asked a good one yourself, where do you find a good demo crew? Can I do it by myself? That's really up to you, man. I probably wouldn't. But my entire business model is predicated on doing as little work as possible myself, like physical work. Because once you get down the acquisitions, the financing portion of real estate investing, I think that becomes the highest and best use of your time. I think if you were to take yourself out of that role and start doing the work, then you would be kind of underperforming for yourself. So now, don't get me wrong, in the first couple of properties that you have or you're getting into, there is likely some sort of like capital issue where it's going to be cheaper for you to do everything yourself. But I would really urge everybody that wants to build a sizable portfolio to remove themselves from that position as quickly as possible. Because at some point, regardless of what industry you're in, every small business, the bottleneck becomes, the owner. I can confidently say that in all of my businesses right now, I am the bottleneck. I am throttling back the performance of and the potential of all of the businesses because of just, general underperforming from me. So in any equation that you're able to remove yourself when capital allows is probably for the best. Demoing a property is probably one of the cheaper things that you can do. There is a little bit of skill involved as far as making sure that you don't, hack into walls right where the electrical wiring is ran, or mess up plumbing or anything like that. But yeah, I would say that's one of the cheaper things, and I would say a lot of people, if you get quotes to rehab the property, probably include that demo cost, and it's generally in like the hundreds of dollars, not thousands of dollars. So it really depends on where you are from a capital perspective and what your intentions are and how you want to like grow your portfolio. So I think that's about the best that I can offer. A good demo crew is one of those things that even if you were to hire contractors, they would bring in people specifically for demo that are not the same as their contractors, like the actual people that are putting the things back in. So demoing is one of the more, I guess, unskilled type work. Probably most contractors would consider that like grunt work, where people that just need a job and are willing to do a lot of physical labor for not a lot of money. I think that's one of the areas in the construction world that they're most utilized. Hello. Thanks for stopping by. This is really fun. Any types of renovations projects that you steer clear of? That's a fantastic question. I don't think so. I think for the most part, I would say so long as the scope of work plus the purchase price is 75% or lesser of the ARV, then I'm not necessarily scared of much because, it's kind of baked into the price. So one of the cool things that I realized about real estate investing at some point is that there aren't so much as, there aren't like red flags in real estate or things to steer clear of. Really depends on, the capital available to you. And everything has a price tag. So rather than it being a red flag, so long as you budget for that red flag, it's not really a red flag so much as something that you're going to have to deal with. So there are particular problems that I don't necessarily care to revisit because of like the level of difficulty. But if the price were right, I would deal with them. One of those is groundwater. Like we have one property that it's only like a 700 square foot house, and we have 3 sump pumps underneath it. And It was built in like the 30s and 40s, not that well, mind you. And it's on a block crawl space, but the grading around the house is such that all of the water drains to the crawl space of the house. And because there's so little block exposed in most parts of the foundation, we can't add in more dirt and regrade the property. And we also can't take any away just because the way that the house is built, where it's built, the property lines, where they are, there's just nothing that we can do. So I have probably the world's most intricate French drain tile, and sump pump infrastructure under that house. And it's still like a Band-Aid. It's still not fixing the real issue. So because there's no real way to fix that, I would probably be a little bit more sensitive to that. But mold in basements, holes in roofs, replacing subfloors, I'm down to do all of that. I think if floor joists were rotted and beyond the scope of like just sistering them together, I think I would steer clear of those. Probably any sort of like foundation work, things that would require like an architect and a significant amount of permits to be pulled. I'd probably steer clear from that, mainly because in like the price points of properties that we're dealing with, it would be significantly more difficult to ever make any sort of profit, because since our properties are only like $40,000-$50,000 before like that's the average purchase price, and then the ARV is likely 75,000-80,000. I mean, if the scope of work exceeds that, then you would kind of have to get paid to take over the property. So now that I say that out loud, it comes back to like the first thing that I said. Perhaps I should have stopped there. Like the first thing I said. Maybe I'm just starting to repeat myself in this rant. Thanks for being on though. I really appreciate it. Is your 75% rule because you want to get all of your capital out with a refi? Yes, it is. Good catch. Purchase price plus rehab cost lesser than 75%, just so whenever the seasoning requirements for whatever lender we're working with are up, then it will appraise in a manner that we can pull all of our capital out. Because you really can't beat infinite returns. And if you were to leave capital in, while it might not be a bad idea, if you're able to get all your capital out and still make money, then there's no limit on how many times you could repeat that, which is pretty cool. But I also understand that it might not be possible in all markets. Good question, Lily. I really appreciate you being on here and asking that. And if you are on here and you do not follow Lily, please go ahead and do that. Any tips on picking a property management company or maybe potential pitfalls? I know you don't use one, but I think I will need to until I can quit my day job. That's a really good question. And I would say be careful. I would say I'm not quite sure what market you're in, but after doing tons of thinking and tons of watching other property management companies get created and then subsequently fold, I really don't think being a property management company in a C class type area, even a low B, is like a sustainable business model. I think, I say this pretty regularly because I think this is one of the most common questions that I get, and it sounds really bad, and I always feel bad when I say it, because I do have, some people that I really care for that are in the industry, and I'm not trying to speak ill of them or their business model. But, it's one of those things where, let's say your average rent is $800 per month. Well, the industry standard for property management is, 10%. So $80 per month. How much time can someone truly spend on your property for that $80 per month? And, there are a lot of things that aren't necessarily charged for that are expected that can easily take, 3-4 hours per month. So now you're already down to $20 per hour. And still, this is without taxes or thinking about any of the employees. So a lot of times, just because of that natural pitfall of property management, most people are just like, they try to scale their way out of it. And they say, well, sure, it's only $80 per property, but when I have 200 of them, now we're talking about some serious cash. Well, you're also talking about a 24/7 job that has serious bandwidth issues. So now they need to hire someone, which eats into their original figures. So it's just like a slow, death by 1,000 cuts type situation. The other avenue that some property management companies will do is, in order to survive for themselves, then they will charge you each time they have to interact with your property. I think the first property management company that I used, they had like a minimum service call of $45. So anytime our resident so much as called that management company, I was charged $45. Well, most months, this resulted in about $1,000 of rent collected, only about $100 to $200 being actually dispersed to me at the end of the month after all of their fees. So now that's a sustainable business model for the property manager, but it's not a sustainable business model for the property owner. So it almost seems like in this area, the two are constantly opposing each other, and it's just really difficult for all parties to kind of be happy, because I think, especially when it's your first couple of rental properties, or even if it's a large portfolio, you expect a certain level of service that's very difficult to provide the amount that's paid. So I would say when it comes to management companies, just keep that in mind, that they're probably spread too thin, and they are probably a little bit too busy, because they're either known or unbeknownst to them, they're trying to solve their bandwidth issue. They probably have good intentions and they're trying to do the best of jobs, but it's just really difficult, and things will fall through the cracks, and work orders will be put in and never actually completed, and you may or may not already be charged. So I would say that the way technology is at the moment, everything that I know now about property management, I would say I get what you're saying. And we did use a property manager for our first like 60 or so properties. But the way that technology is nowadays, I think that you would be able to very effectively manage your own properties in the beginning with very little time commitment. I mean, we've got like 130-ish, somewhere around there, properties at the moment. And we set up our management company because everybody, my brother, myself, we all technically have full-time jobs, and we're not 100% into the real estate. So we did not want to have like a unmanageable influx of phone calls on a daily basis. So we set up our management company where we're not available by phone. You can leave us a voicemail, and we will likely text you or email you back. We have an automated phone system where if you do have a 24/7 emergency or something like that, then you can call our number, and by using the touchpad, you can get in touch with the appropriate contractors. We use Appfolio. They have a fantastic tenant portal, and you can file work orders. You can pay your rent. We don't really accept money orders or cash. It all has to be done through the online portal. So it's pretty hands-off if you build things right on the front end. And I say hands-off kind of loosely, right? Like, it's still very hands-on, but not in the sense that it is distracting you from your day job or whatnot. So like I said, all of us work full-time jobs, and we just kind of keep Appfolio open and respond to all of the things appropriately, forward contractors work orders, and help the contractors get whatever it is that they need to do. So in the event that there is a work order filed online, then what we do is we receive it, we forward it to the appropriate contractor. All of our contractors know that they should be on the lookout for emails from us on a daily basis. that are actually handling our maintenance items. And, they log into the portal, they see it, they see the resident's information, contact information, what times the resident's available, and then we step out of it, and it's between the resident and the contractor. So John Soforic, the author of The Wealthy Gardener, which is a fantastic book that you should read, he has over 100 properties, and I just was asking him if he managed his own, and his response to me was kind of snarky and funny. But he said, are you asking me if I move my thumbs on my phone and handle my properties? He was like, because that's all property management is these days, just because the way that software has developed, everybody, all the contractors that we use, they text and email very frequently from their phone. So we don't do much like physical running around checking on things. It's all done pretty much from a chair, from our phones, that type of management. So I think you could probably do it a lot easier than you expect it to be. But there is a learning curve. I will say that. $9,000 for demo? What in the world, man? You demo in a mansion? Is this like a 10,000 square foot apartment building? Gracious. $9,000 for demo. Is this like asbestos? Are you doing some sort of like environmental remediation? Man, $9,000 for demo is the most absurd thing that I have heard all day. Gracious. Let me check my text real quick. Okay. Still the most absurd thing I've heard all day. Gracious, man. $9,000. What are you trying to do with this property? Oh, man. I could tear down a house for less than $9,000. I would shop around. Somebody's trying to get you, man. I could tear down a house and a garage for $9,000. We rebuilt a basement wall for around $9,000. Man, I hope you're still on here. I hope I'm going to get some more clarification on this. My interest is piqued. What's your definition of C-class neighborhood? That's the crazy part, man. There's really not one. It's pretty well speculative. I would say if your rents are lesser than $1,000 per month, then I don't know how property management is a sustainable business model. I would say for me to be interested in managing properties, I would want all of the properties rent, like for me to manage other people's properties. It's cost effective for us to manage our own properties for all the reasons that I just said. But if I were a property manager, I would want to only manage properties that the rents were greater than $2,000 per month per unit or property. I think you're starting to get a little bit more sustainable at that point. Good points on property management. I suppose putting forth the effort to create a good system would allow me to do it myself and also scale. A bit of work up front, but worth it in the long run. I completely agree, man. Thanks, Leo. I sure do appreciate it. Good morning, man. I also don't even think it would be that much work necessarily. I think if you were to talk to some of these companies like Appfolio, Buildium, Apartments.com, and play around with their system, get some demos, I think you're going to be really impressed. And then, one of the things that we realized is for residents that we put into properties that, we post the properties as available for rent on the websites, they apply through our portal. We are their main point of contact from start to finish. We have a very high success rate of everyone following the appropriate like the appropriate steps and being part of our system. And, even when we list properties for rent, we don't do any in-person showings until after an application is filled out. And, they are already, like, we verify that they are a qualified person. And then, only then, will we meet them out at the property. And the reason that we did it that way was we noticed that a lot of the property managers spent so much time just running around to properties, showing it to unqualified people. And we really just want to build like the most efficient system out there. So we have a really high success rate with all of our systems when we place the residents. But when we buy properties that are already rented out, that is when we have the most amount of difficulty. If the people that have been living there for 4 or 5 years, if they've been calling somebody each time they had a problem, if they are, not the type of people that have smartphones or trust the internet with their payment information, which is pretty common, then we have a really difficult time. And it's generally right now, because we haven't refined our like welcome packets or our way of introducing ourselves to the point to kind of overcome some of these friction points in these people's mind, because change is hard for everybody. And I get it that, if I were living in a place for multiple years and the property were to sell and be under new management, it would probably feel a little bit invasive. So we're probably not doing the best of jobs at introducing ourselves. And then people don't want to change the way that they're doing things. So they have these wrong expectations of, what they expect from us. And we just fail all their expectations because it's not the way that we do business. So, or have any interest in doing business. Man, I don't know why I started talking about this, Josh. A good system, a bit of work up front, but worth it in the long run. Yeah, I don't remember. That was a rant that. Yeah, I don't know. I don't have any properties in like rural areas. All of our properties are inside the city limits of Dayton or in the suburbs of Dayton. We don't necessarily have anything out in like Farmersville. The only thing that I would be interested in if I were to be out in like a really rural area is how hard are they to rent? Like how many people want to live in those areas? And then what would the people want to do with any of the land associated with that area? I'd only be interested in like what they wanted to do with the land for liability reasons. A lot of insurance companies, there's one thing that is not thought about often, and that is in rural areas. So a lot of insurance is based on the distance from fire departments and the distance from fire hydrants. And volunteer fire departments, there's a surcharge on the insurance. So before you start looking at whatever rural area, especially foreclosures, I would get a couple different insurance quotes and figure out what protection class it's in. PC6 or protection class 6. A lot of insurance companies would not write insurance on that. And protection class 6 means it is, 5 miles or more from a probably volunteer fire department. And then also that there are likely no fire hydrants within a couple thousand feet of the property. So I would check on things like that because any of the price savings that you might have from going out that far may be eaten up in insurance costs. I mean, obviously, insurance goes up if your house would likely be all the way burned down before a fire department gets there. My biggest concern is dealing with problem tenants. I would have a hard time evicting somebody. I'm too forgiving. I think that's everybody, man. And I think that's probably not true. I would put myself in the same boat. I And because of that, I mean, I am not in charge of our eviction process, right? So I've got some people helping at this point. But, uh, at the end of the day, I'm sure you do well for yourself, but I also don't think that you do so well that you could afford to pay for someone else's family as well. And, at the end of the day, the big machine that you're building stops if people don't, respect it properly. So, um, it's definitely like a black and white type thing to a certain point. I totally hear what you're saying. I believe every story that I'm told. Fortunately, I've got some people around me that do not believe any of the stories they're told. So it's a good mix. But I mean, also, especially during the pandemic, we had a couple of properties get really massive. Um, you know, ledgers. So there are like two or three people I think that owe us more than $5,000, which their rent isn't but like $750, $800, but somewhere between like the eviction moratorium and then also some of these like community programs that are helping them allegedly helping people pay their rent. Uh, we kind of got caught up. It's not like we necessarily allowed it. We have done a lot of evictions in this same time frame, but there's one local program in particular that promised to help people with their rent, including like 3 to 4 months in either direction. And then they even made us sign like affidavits saying we're not going to evict these people because they're working with this company. And now this company is a little bit faltering. I shouldn't say a company, the nonprofit. So I mean, I get what you're saying to an extent, but at the end of the day, you're likely going to get to a point where it's like, hey, this is actually breaking me. I cannot afford to, you know, pay for their family too. And if I keep this up, I will also lose the house. And I also think that if you are the person that puts the resident in the property, then you likely that really cuts down that exposure in that area as well. So, if you are doing the leasing yourself, then you have control over the qualifications. And generally, what I found is when I have used realtors to place residents, they don't have to do the management side on the back end. And, they might be more prone to making exceptions on applicants because they get their lease placement fee at the time the lease is, signed, and they don't have to do any of the management side. So if you are the one doing all the vetting, if you're the one that's setting the requirements, I don't think this is something that should like actively be on your radar. I think it's definitely a real thing, but I would say, and this was one of the things that I had to really work with myself to overcome whenever I left law enforcement, because you're overexposed to the worst of the worst, and it makes people a little bit jaded at times. And what I have found to be true is that most people, like 99% plus people, want to do the right thing. They want to live in a clean, well-maintained home. They want to pay their bills timely. They want to be viewed favorably from the owner, right? So, I would say most of our residents, because they're single family homes, not apartment units, I think that's, and again, that's one of my own things. I prefer single family homes over apartments because I feel like people have a little bit more pride of ownership. But we have a lot of residents that if something minor happens, they will fix it themselves. We have several that if it's little, I mean, they even hire people themselves to come in and take care of whatever issue. So most people want to do the right thing. Most people want to be timely on their rent. Sure, you're going to have the bad characters occasionally, but if you regularly have those bad characters, then it's more of a reflection of your screening process, not of the industry or the property. An hour, we've got 12 people. Feeling good. Awesome, man. I'm happy. The things that I just said were some hard knocks that I had to sit myself down and have some very serious talks with me. And it was also just, especially when I first took over property management, this is one of those things that I probably shouldn't say, but I'm in too deep, and I think it's fair. But yeah, I mean, just from the baggage that I had from law enforcement, and the lack of education and the lack of exposure I had to property management, I assumed that all of my interactions with all of the people that lived in the properties were going to be largely negative and largely difficult. And that couldn't be further from the truth. And I think once you actually start talking to people, I mean, unfortunately, I think it's probably true that the bar to be a good property owner is so low. And I think you hear the same story over and over again of I've been complaining about X forever and it has never been fixed. And I get that to a certain extent, but I think most people on this channel, we're in it for the long haul. I want these properties to be in good order, well maintained for 50 plus years. And if there's an issue, I really want to know about it. What really makes me frustrated is when people, have issues forever without telling me, because that's a real thing, apparently. I went through on an appraisal once. I walked through the house because the appraiser needed to see the inside. And her toilet hadn't been working right. It hardly had the ability to flush. And she said it had been that way for months. She has access to her online portal. She knows exactly where to find us. She knows how to get in touch with us. We've had several conversations. She never mentioned the toilet until I showed up. And unfortunately, that was not the only issue, but she never told us about any of the issues. And when we went out there, when she moved out, and everything the neighbors had to say about her, it made sense as to why she never wanted to tell us about anything. But still, that's the kind of stuff that I dislike. So, yeah, I was very pleasantly surprised whenever we actually took over property management, and we have a fantastic relationship with, I would say, about 99% of the people that live in the properties. Cool. Any questions? Oh, man. Oh, no. I did not put up this disclaimer. Whew. Y'all don't hold me accountable for anything that I have said previously. This is the official disclaimer. 1 hour in. Any questions you guys have, let me know. I also think these disclaimers, I mean, I've been watching a bunch of these cryptocurrency people, and they are burning up this whole not financial advice thing. And I get it, but at what point is it more of a reflection on the people that are watching the videos, and why would you not do your own research and trust blindly what someone you've never met on the internet says? I don't know. I feel like as we really get settled in to technology and how the internet works and all of the ease of which anyone could post an opinion on the internet, I think these disclaimers will start carrying less and less weight, and it just becomes a common sense type thing. But again, that's mainly towards all the crypto videos. Peace for all. What's up, man? I'm happy. I'm happy you're back in it. Thanks for coming here so regularly. Yeah, I appreciate it. This is tons of fun for me. I'm starting to see, though, that I really need to start posting more videos. I know I said that last week, too. So, you know what? Next week, I'm going to write it down on my little notepad so I don't forget. Next week, I'm going to shoot for 5 videos by 9 a.m. every morning. The daily videos, I really miss doing those. There we go. That's my commitment. 5 videos next week. I was in the rhythm of releasing them at 9 a.m. every morning. Probably going to get back to that. 9 a.m., 5 videos. There we go. Get this. I'm thankful for all of you. This whole YouTube experience for me has been fantastic. I have built some awesome relationships from this channel, and really thankful for everything that YouTube has kind of brought about. But I definitely, if I were to stop posting these daily videos, it would be one of those things that I regret later on. So it's kind of like working out. It's tough to get into the gym at 5 a.m. every morning, but it becomes easy at some point. And then when you get out of that rhythm, all of a sudden it's like climbing a mountain all over again. What's a good bank to loan me money for a rehab? That is $1 million question. If you find the answer to this, please let us know. And this is one thing that I say often, I'm super thankful for my brother. My brother is like the backbone of our business. There would be no rental property portfolio if it weren't for this fellow. But just as fervently as I look for additional properties for us to purchase, my brother looks for banks willing to work with us. So, at one point, I know he was reaching out to like 5 to 10 banks per day. And I know that he regularly has meetings with lenders to figure out like what's their appetite, what they are looking for, and how we could potentially work together. So he works very diligently on that front. If I had to make very broad, sweeping statements on rehabs, I would say that your best bets are either a local credit union, finding a HUD home and doing a FHA 203K loan, but that would have to be an owner-occupied property. You could work with hard money lenders, but they're very expensive. It's the business they're in, but I mean, they charge anywhere from 1 to 6 points origination just to close a loan. So the points is just a percentage point. So if you do a $100,000 loan, it could cost you anywhere from $1,000 to $6,000 just for the loan to be done, which is pretty steep. And then it's also going to be a high interest rate. But if you don't have any other options and there's a lot of meat on the bone, then it's probably a good idea. However, the other option that you could have, it's a lot more legwork on your end. It involves networking, being very presentable, really knowing your stuff, having a resume or a track record. But you could also raise money yourself from friends and family, so long as it's secured by first position mortgages or even second position mortgages. So long as it's secured money, then from how I understand the SEC regulations, there really aren't that many. There are some usury laws, but for the most part, if it's two businesses dealing with each other, then it's pretty flexible. If it's secured, if it's unsecured, you want to be really, really careful, and you want to mind your P's and Q's and read up on the SEC regulations and whatnot, and make sure that you're not violating those in any way. Actually, regardless of whether it's secured or not, you should read everything the SEC ever has to say about something that you're attempting to do. So we have raised a lot of money from friends and family on first position mortgages. So I would say those are your best bets in broad sweeping strokes. Yeah, man, they can be short and sweet. Daily tips. I like it. Thanks, Henry Hawkins. Man, I haven't seen your name in quite some time. Thanks for coming back. Yeah, this is tons of fun. I tell you guys what, this is awesome. And yeah, I think about 10 minutes is probably the most effective range, both for YouTube and also just for getting out the appropriate amount of content. I think any less, then you're likely being a little bit too succinct and leaving some answers. And then I think any longer than 10 minutes, especially about a topic that's really dry, as most real estate topics are, it's a little hard to listen to. So yeah, next week, I'm pretty excited about it. Man, I really hope that's possible. My wife went over our schedule yesterday for next week. I know a lot of traveling is happening, but I don't know. I don't quite remember when. It's one of my strong suits. Awesome. Well, anybody have any other questions? If not, I'm going to do that skedaddling thing. I don't. They like to see 3 to 6 months, but most lenders, when they're talking about their reserve fund, they are really only. It's not like a true reserve. It's not like they care about your capital expenditures or any repairs and maintenance. They just want to see a fund. The ones that do have those requirements, from my understanding, they just want to see that you have 3 to 6 months of like mortgage payments saved somewhere. But that's about it. Thank you, Miriam. I appreciate you being on here. Has the real estate business tanked since all this COVID crap? No. Maybe in some places, but just like a broad real estate as a whole, no. Nope. I would say since I got my disclaimer rolling, I will say, like the attorney that I use, he said that, and I don't know all this stuff, but he said that the CDC moratorium on evictions was found to be unconstitutional, and that they overstepped their bounds. So, as far as I understand, the eviction moratorium was either a fluke, and it likely won't happen again. So there's that. That's a good thing. So I would say, if anything, for the real estate business as a whole, this everything that we've had to endure over the past, however long, was probably beneficial, especially from a litigation perspective for the real estate business as a whole, because now we know what can't happen in situations like this. I need to get to work. Thanks, Ryan. Have a good weekend. You too, man. I appreciate it. Thanks for being on here. Moratorium means that a specific thing cannot happen for a specific set of time. So the first time I heard this word was in the insurance agency. If a place is experiencing like a flood or something, then insurance companies will put a moratorium on business in that area. So let's say Jacksonville, Florida has a really bad storm. For a brief amount of time, no insurance companies will write insurance on properties in Jacksonville, Florida, things like that. So the eviction moratorium was, I guess, like the CDC saying that you cannot be evicted for not paying your rent for, however long that moratorium was in effect. We're looking at a potential property that has all two-prong outlets throughout the house, not grounded. Is this something that you would have to have completely rewired? No, most places are grandfathered in. So a lot of the properties that we own have a combination of two-prong and actual grounded outlets. The only thing that I would suggest never doing is some people go ahead and just replace the outlets with three-prong, and you should not do that. If it's not grounded, put in the two-prong thing. If it is grounded, then you can put in the three-prong outlets, but you're not supposed to put three-prong where three-prong has no business being without rewiring it, like you said. So my personal house has a combination of two-prong, three-prong. It's really common in this area. I wouldn't worry about it at all. Rewiring an entire house is pretty costly. I think the most that we have spent is $12,000 to rewire an entire house. We did that on the property where if I knew how much it was going to cost, I likely would not have done it. Is that a good deal in your market? I forget where you're at exactly. I guess that's about, if you get into the right area here locally, that's about how much you'd spend. It would be a 3-bedroom though. It'd probably be a 3-bed, 2-bath. So I guess it's a big difference. There are certain areas where this will be the case. Oakwood. Nice. That's right, Montana. Real pretty. I need to get out there sooner than later. Awesome. Well, any questions, comments, concerns? Awesome. Creeks are tricky. Sometimes creeks are indicative of being in a flood zone. There are a couple areas around here where if it's close to a creek, then it's likely in a flood zone. But Montana sounds like it does not have many flood zones. Is Montana known for its flooding? I don't think so. Louisiana sure is, though, huh? Houston, too? Alrighty. Well, hour and 15 minutes. I'm going to go ahead and call it a day. And I really appreciate you all being on here. Next week, Friday, 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on YouTube, I'll be here answering questions. And next week, be on the lookout for me releasing a new video at 9 a.m. every morning. I'm going to get back in that rhythm. Really excited about it. And it's really exciting. So if you have anything that you want me to talk about, go ahead and send an email to ryan@seekwisdom.us, because I think the hardest part is that first video, getting the topic for that first one. So any ideas, shoot them my way. All right. I really appreciate you all, and I will see you next week.